I was just saying Louis doesn't understand social distancing. So he goes up like wanting to cuddle everything, and particularly any babies younger than him.
You've probably seen the headline floating around your feed. A quiet, unexpected bow. A hush falling over a royal crowd. Even the king, for a moment, caught completely off guard. It sounds like the kind of scene that belongs in a period drama, not on a modern palace balcony. And that's exactly why it spread the way it did, because a 7-year-old finding a moment of stillness feels almost unbelievable when everything we know about him says otherwise. Here's the thing, though. Before we get into what actually happened and why it matters, it's worth understanding who Prince Louis really is, because the real story is stranger, funnier, and in some ways more touching than any staged moment of royal solemnity could ever be. This is a boy who has built an entire public reputation on refusing to sit still. He is, by nearly every account from royal watchers, journalists, and the family's own body language, the most unfiltered member of the House of Windsor's youngest generation. So when any hint of quiet composure shows up in a clip involving him, it stops people in their tracks. Let's talk about why. Prince Louis Arthur Charles was born on April 23, 2018, the third child of Prince William and Catherine, Princess of Wales. From the moment the town crier announced his arrival outside the Lindo wing, he was given a title that, historically speaking, he shouldn't have automatically received. Under the rules King George V put in place in 1917, royal titles, like Prince or Princess, were reserved for the monarch's children and the male-line grandchildren of the sovereign. Great-grandchildren, by that old standard, were left out entirely. If those rules had stayed untouched, Louis would have grown up as plain Master Louis Mountbatten Windsor, not a prince at all. That changed because Queen Elizabeth II saw the mathematics of her own family tree and decided to update the rulebook. In 2012, well before Louis was even born, she issued new letters patent extending the title of prince or princess to all the children of the Prince of Wales's eldest son, meaning every child Prince William would ever have. It was a forward-looking decision, made years in advance, that quietly determined Louis's identity before he existed. His name carries its own layers of family history too. Louis is widely understood as a nod to Lord Louis Mountbatten, the influential uncle figure who shaped so much of Prince Philip and Prince Charles's lives. Arthur echoes a name already tucked into both William's and Charles's own full names. And Charles is the clearest tribute of all, a direct nod to his grandfather, the king. None of that history explains why Louis has become the family's breakout personality, though. That part is pure, uncalculated behavior. Go back to June 2022, the Platinum Jubilee, and you'll find the moment most people actually remember him for, not a bow, not a hush, but the exact opposite. Standing on the Buckingham Palace balcony, next to his great-grandmother, 4-year-old Louis clapped his hands over his ears as the RAF flight past roared overhead. His face twisted into a theatrical grimace that instantly became one of the most shared royal images of the decade. It wasn't scripted. It wasn't rehearsed. It was a small child reacting to a loud noise in front of millions of people, and the internet fell in love with him for it. That single image did something no press release ever could. It made the monarchy, for a moment, look like an ordinary family wrangling an overstimulated kid at a loud event. Catherine's response mattered just as much as Louis's reaction. She didn't scold him or rush him out of view. She leaned down, spoke to him calmly, and let the moment play out. Royal commentators pointed to that exchange for months afterward as a small but telling window into how William and Kate actually parent behind the formality. The pattern repeated itself again and again. At King Charles's coronation in May 2023, 5-year-old Louis was caught on camera yawning theatrically during the multi-hour service at Westminster Abbey, looking around the ancient building with a kind of open curiosity only a small child can get away with in front of a global broadcast audience. Later that same year, during Trooping the Colour, cameras caught Prince George gently placing a protective arm on his younger brother to rein in some overenthusiastic waving. An older sibling gesture, so relatable that clips of it were shared under captions, calling George the family's designated chill-out enforcer. Princess Charlotte has played a similar role at times, stepping in with quiet authority whenever Louis's energy threatens to outpace the day's schedule. By the summer of 2025, Louis's antics at Trooping the Color had become something close to an annual tradition in their own right. He was seen waving enthusiastically at the crowd during the RAF flypast, discovering that every wave triggered a fresh wave of cheers from below, and predictably, deciding to keep going. King Charles, watching from beside him, was photographed laughing openly at his grandson's exaggerated gestures, at one point appearing to mimic his own grandfather's wave right back at him. Kate, for her part, wore what royal watchers have jokingly nicknamed her mom face, the universal parental expression that somehow communicates both settle down. And this is adorable in the same look. So when a headline promises a moment of sudden stillness and a stunned monarch, it's worth pausing on why that idea is so compelling in the first place. It isn't because royal watchers expect Louis to suddenly transform into a different child. It's because the contrast between his established reputation and even a flicker of composure is enough to make people sit up and pay attention. A 4-year-old covering his ears is charming. A 5-year-old yawning through a coronation is funny. But a 7-year-old finding one unscripted second of quiet, deliberate stillness in the middle of his usual chaos would be genuinely newsworthy, precisely because it would be so out of character. That's the emotional hook behind headlines like this one, and it says as much about how deeply the public has come to know Louis's personality as it does about any single moment. What's actually far more interesting than a single viral second is the structure sitting underneath all of it, the quiet architecture of titles, succession law, and family strategy that shapes what kind of adult Louis is being raised to become. Because for all his balcony antics, Louis is not just the family's comic relief. He is, whether he fully grasps it yet or not, part of a very deliberate long game. Consider the Duke of Edinburgh title, one of the most storied dukedoms in British history. It dates back to 1726, when King George I first granted it to his grandson, Prince Frederick, as a way of marking him out among a crowded field of royal siblings. Since then, the title has been awarded only a handful of times, and each time it has gone to someone the monarch believed could carry both public duty and private weight. Prince Philip made it iconic. After marrying the then Princess Elizabeth in 1947, he became Duke of Edinburgh and spent decades building the title into something far bigger than a ceremonial label. Through the Duke of Edinburgh's award scheme, he created a program that has reached young people in more than 100 countries, encouraging outdoor skill building, community service, and personal development on a scale most royal initiatives never come close to matching. When Philip died in 2021, the title didn't pass down automatically. It returned, as these things do, to the crown, waiting for the monarch to decide its next chapter. On March 10, 2023, King Charles marked his brother Edward's 59th birthday by granting him the title of Duke of Edinburgh, a gesture widely understood as honoring both Philip's legacy and a promise made years earlier by the late Queen. But there's a crucial catch that royal watchers have flagged repeatedly. Edward's title is a lifetime, non-hereditary grant. Unlike the traditional rules of British peerage, it will not automatically pass to his son, James. When Edward eventually dies, the title reverts to the crown once again, leaving the monarch of the day free to reassign it to whichever younger royal seems fitting. That detail is where Louis's story quietly intersects with the future. He is currently fourth in line to the throne, well outside any realistic path to the crown itself, which paradoxically gives him more room than his older siblings to be shaped for a supporting role rather than a headline one. Royal commentators have floated the Duke of Edinburgh title as a plausible fit for him decades from now, given the symbolic thread connecting it to Philip's memory and Edward's current stewardship. Nothing is confirmed, and nothing will be for years, but it's a reminder that even the family's most easily distracted 7-year-old is growing up inside a structure built for the long term. There's also a second possible title in the conversation, Duke of York, traditionally reserved for the monarch's second son. Right now it remains attached to Prince Andrew, and given the sustained public controversy surrounding him, few expect it to be handed down through the usual line of succession when the time comes. If it isn't reissued in its familiar form, royal historians have suggested King Charles, or a future monarch, could simply create an entirely new dukedom for Louis instead, following a precedent the monarchy has used before when older titles became politically inconvenient. All of this sits against the backdrop of a broader shift Charles has been open about since taking the throne, a smaller, more streamlined monarchy, focused on fewer working royals and fewer ceremonial titles handed out by default. That means nothing about Louis's future is guaranteed the way it might have been a generation or two ago. Whether his own children someday receive royal titles, whether he receives a dukedom at all, and what specific role he ends up playing in the working family will depend on decisions that haven't been made yet, shaped by a monarchy that is actively rethinking its own size and visibility. Zoom out even further, and Louis's story becomes a window into just how much royal parenting itself has changed across generations. Queen Victoria, by most historical accounts, kept her 9 children at an emotional distance, favoring formality and obedience over warmth. Her great-grandson King George VI and his wife Elizabeth, later the Queen Mother, softened that tone slightly but remained fundamentally traditional, rarely involved in the daily texture of their daughters' lives. Queen Elizabeth II, once she became a young mother herself, largely continued that pattern, spending long stretches away from her children Charles and Andrew and Edward while duty as monarch took priority. Charles has spoken publicly, in general terms, about how emotionally distant his own upbringing felt, including his time at Gordonstown, a boarding school known for its rigorous, character-building discipline. Diana, Princess of Wales, is widely credited with breaking that mold. She hugged her sons in public, knelt to speak to them at eye level, brought them on official tours in ways royal mothers hadn't before, and made a visible effort to expose William and Harry to ordinary life. Fast food outings, state schools, direct contact with charities, and communities most royal children never encountered up close. William has spoken about wanting to build on that openness rather than retreat from it. Alongside Kate, he has been notably candid about mental health, both in interviews and in the family's own public messaging, and observers consistently describe the Wales household as one where structure and warmth coexist, bedtimes and screen limits sit alongside plenty of room for the kids to simply act like kids. That balance is really the through line connecting every viral Louis moment to the quieter, more procedural side of his story. The ear covering, the yawning, the enthusiastic waving that had to be gently reined in by an older sibling. None of it happens by accident, and none of it happens despite the family's parenting style. It happens because of it. William and Kate have made a visible choice to let their children's personalities show, even when the cameras are rolling, trusting that authenticity plays better with the public than stiff perfection ever could. Louis, more than George or Charlotte, has become the clearest beneficiary and the clearest symbol of that choice. So the next time a headline promises a hushed crowd and a speechless king, it's worth remembering what actually tends to make Louis newsworthy. Not silence, but noise. Not stillness, but a boy who has turned every balcony appearance into a small, unscripted performance the public can't look away from. That, far more than any single stage moment, is a real story behind Prince Louis, a child born into 8 centuries of protocol and title law, and growing up determined, so far, to meet all of it with a grin, a wave, and both hands clapped firmly over his ears. It's also worth understanding just how unusual this level of attention actually is for a child this young. Most royal children of the past didn't become recognizable public personalities until well into their teens, if ever. Louis achieved something closer to global fame before he'd even started primary school, and that says as much about the modern media environment as it does about him. A single photograph taken on a palace balcony in 2022 can now travel through TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube within minutes, remixed into memes, reaction videos, and think pieces about royal parenting, all without a single official statement from Kensington Palace. That speed is new. Diana's era had tabloids and evening news broadcasts. Louis's era has algorithms that can turn 4 seconds of a boy covering his ears into a moment analyzed by millions of strangers before the day is even over. That visibility comes with real tension for William and Kate, and it's one they've been fairly open about navigating. On one hand, the family clearly understands that Louis's candid moments generate enormous goodwill, the kind of warm, relatable coverage that no carefully staged photo call could manufacture on its own. On the other hand, both parents have made deliberate efforts to protect their children's day-to-day privacy, limiting paparazzi access, controlling the release of official photographs, several of which Kate has taken herself, and shielding the kids from any appearance that isn't genuinely age-appropriate. It's a careful, ongoing balancing act. Let the public see enough to feel connected, without exposing 3 young children to a level of scrutiny that could shape them the way it once shaped their father and grandfather. There's a generational irony sitting inside all of this, too. Charles grew up in an era that prized restraint above almost everything else, where Monarch's grandchildren were expected to appear composed, quiet, and largely unseen until they were considered ready for public life. Now, decades later, it's Charles himself who gets photographed laughing uncontrollably at his youngest grandson's antics on that very same balcony. The same institution that once trained its children out of visible emotion is now, at least in this generation, actively embracing it. Whether that shift reflects a genuine change in royal culture or simply a pragmatic response to a media landscape that rewards authenticity, it's hard to imagine Queen Victoria recognizing the family on display at Trooping the Color today. None of this guarantees anything about who Louis becomes once the balcony waves and viral clips give way to actual responsibility. Children who grow up performing, even unintentionally, in front of a global audience don't always carry that same ease into adulthood, and royal history is full of examples where public charm in childhood didn't translate neatly into public life later on. But for now, at 7 years old, Louis remains the family's most reliable source of unscripted warmth, proof, according to plenty of royal watchers, that even an institution as old and rule-bound as the British monarchy still has room for a kid who just wants to wave at the crowd one more time before someone tells him it's time to stop. What do you think the future actually holds for him? A quieter role shaped by duty, or more of the same delightful chaos we've already come to expect? Let us know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the real story behind the royal family's youngest scene stealer, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more.